Hello, everybody. It's me, Little Hands 91, or Caleb Perkins. Let's just go Caleb Perkins. You know me as Caleb Perkins, and said I'm gonna make me a new video today. I'm self quarantining, which you should be too, um, because I had a fever last night, and after I got to work with a bunch of little kids, so hopefully I didn't kill those kids. But I'll talk more about that kind of stuff later because I'm tired of the whole sickness thing. Let's talk about some UFOs, huh? Because some crazy shit's been going on. I don't know how many of you have been paying attention. Probably very few. Most of you probably focused on what's going on down here. Hold on one second. And I think that we should be paying a lot more attention to what's going on out there because some crazy shit's going on down out there. So this video came out this month. It says the video was taken on the 3rd. Some dude has he's like, I mean, every UFO conspiracy theorist is gonna instantly believe this bullshit. But I'm just gonna say this is some pretty crazy footage. I'm not. First of all, when it comes to like CGI, it's really hard to CGI something like this, and I don't know how many of you have actually looked at the moon through like a camera that has high zoom capabilities, or even like a set of binoculars, but you can actually see some pretty good detail. Like the moon is actually a lot closer than we realize. So let's watch this video real quick.
Footage comes from Montreal. With the use of a telescope, we can see these three cylindrical.
You see the shadows. So you got one down really low to the screen. You got one in the middle here, and then one up above from that. And you can actually see their shadows going with them. So I feel like that's a pretty hard thing to fake. But on the other hand, the odds that this person set up the camera and caught this thing right as this was about to happen is a little odd, right? But it's just, this is a really hard thing to fake. One, the distance of whatever we're filming. It's not like we can just set up these like little items and be like, and film them and be like, oh, it's much bigger than we realize. But as far as CGI goes, it's pretty hard to CGI these things flying over the moon. At least unless you're like a Hollywood company, maybe. So let's check it out.
Objects doing a low flyby off the moon.
If that's real, that's
let's
fucking
take a look at the footage and we'll talk about it afterwards.
Damn, I don't even know if he's just setting it up. But the fact that he kind of points it over to the exact area where it's going to be. But hey, I mean, shit happens, And this isn't the only thing that's been going on in terms of UFO. I mean, that is crazy. That is legitimately one of the most crazy things I've ever seen. If that's real, ooh boy, let me tell you. We got bigger fish to fry than the COVID-19, huh? Well, see, before this event, there was a Commander David Fravor, and there have been 2 other military sightings. But these Air Force pilots and Marine Corps pilots are seeing and I mean, they're not just seeing these through an infrared video, even though that's what we're seeing here. David Fravor, in his interview with Joe Rogan, says he has eyes on whatever it is that's flying. He can physically see this craft that's moving in very strange ways. So let's. This was a CNN news article, which I know right now a lot of people are like, oh, they're not going to listen to CNN because they think the COVID-19 is real and we don't. But no, I think this is pretty legit.
Military official who ran the covert government program up until this last November.
Oh, no.
Luis Elizondo. Luis, thank you so much for your time tonight. I mean, first, tell us what the purpose...
So, David Fravor was sent out on this mission, and it was just a training op. This dude, his jet wasn't even armed. He was with like 3 or 4 other jets. So it was like a group training exercise. Plus, he's got a co-pilot behind him, and he is just in the middle of it told, "Hey, abort mission. We're switching over to a live fire operation." And they give him these coordinates. He goes out there, and they see this thing. And turns out, and he doesn't even know this. He doesn't even know he's a part of this UFO monitoring operation. But this dude right here and the government have been doing this this type of UFO monitoring program for quite some time. Well, I mean, no shit, but
Purpose of the program was and why it was so secretive.
Sure. The purpose of the program, Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, was really designed to do just that. From a national security perspective, identify those things that we see, whether we see them electro-optically, we see them with radar, we see them as eyewitness reports, through a myriad of different ways and avenues that we receive the information, and try to ascertain and determine if that information is a potential threat to national security, in a nutshell.
So what did you find?
Well, we found a lot. I think.
well, we found a lot.
I think it's probably
They fucking
been a
exist.
little bit mischaracterized in some of the social media you see and what people put out, because a lot of times when we don't have a lot of information, we tend to fill in those gaps with what we think is logical. And there's still, by the way, a lot we really don't know. I think what's important is that we have identified some very, very interesting, anomalous type of aircraft. Let's call them aircraft. Things that...
Let's call them aircraft. So it's not like... I mean, that's crazy that this shit is on the news. Things that used to be like covered up are now just on the news now. And, you know, so this dude's openly talking about this program that he's been a part of, right? So here's, let's see, another one that went on. And this is actually David Fravor's footage, the footage that he captured.
Still can't explain what he says he saw that day.
So he can
November
physically see it.
2004, the Navy fighter pilot was on a training mission west of San Diego when he was ordered to check out something in the water not far away. On a clear day, over a smooth ocean, he saw the object, waves breaking over it, and says he saw something hovering above it.
It's randomly moving.
So this object is like has waves breaking over this flying craft is like so close to the ocean that waves are breaking over it. And so he's about to detail us what the type of movement he was observing.
Something hovering above it.
It's randomly moving north, south, east, west, just random. You know, just stopping, going the other direction, like you could do with a helicopter, but a little bit more abrupt. It looks like a 40-foot long Tic Tac with no wings.
Fravor says he and his four-man team tracked the object for several minutes until it just disappeared. Tonight, CNN has learned the Pentagon had a secretive program to research UFOs like the one Fravor spotted. The project was called the Advanced Aviation Threat Identification Program, run by an official named Luis Elizondo.
I think this is a national security imperative.
Oh, here's this guy.
We have clear things that we do not understand how they work, operating in areas that we can't control.
A defense official tells CNN the program cost at least $22 million over 5 years before it was shut down in 2012. According to the New York Times and Politico, which first reported this story, tens of millions of dollars for the project were pushed through by former Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid. Those publications say a lot of the money for the Pentagon UFO program went to a company called Bigelow Aerospace, run by a longtime friend of Reid's, Robert Bigelow, a big believer in UFOs. Public records show Bigelow contributed about $20,000 to Reid and his political action committee.
Dude, how crazy is that, dude? Like, this is like, oh my god. So you got like this like political corrupted bullshit going on with the military bullshit. Dude, this is going to be in some Anna Jacobson, which if you don't know who Anna Jacobson is, she's an author, and she wrote authored the Operation Paperclip book, which detailed how we kind of recruited these Nazi scientists, and then the Pentagon's brain, which kind of details, you know, the going-ons in the DARPA program, which is our weapons manufacturing program in the United States. So this is going to be in like some Anna Jacobsen book, or maybe her daughter's book, or some crazy shit. But this chick, she thinks like we shouldn't be doing anything about this, basically.
Campaign contributor got research contracts from this program. That just is a bad picture. It doesn't look good for anybody. It's hard to imagine that something that came about that way and profited somebody who pushed for the program was a good use of taxpayer money.
A Pentagon spokesman, in fact, told CNN the program was shuttered because there were, quote, other higher priority issues that merited funding.
It's definitely crazy to spend $22 million to research UFOs. Pilots are always going to see things that they can't identify, and we should probably look into them. But to identify them as UFOs, to target UFOs to research, that is not the priority we have as a national security matter right now.
But pilots like Fravor, who...
I mean, really? That's things flying around your airspace that you don't know what the fuck they are? That's not a national threat. And look, I'm not trying to fearmonger here. Look, I get it. You don't even know what these things are, or if they are, they have what their intent are, is. But I mean, yeah, just trying to figure out what the fuck is going on might be a good idea, especially since, you look at this aircraft that has extreme physical limitations that this other aircraft apparently doesn't, because it's like literally stopping and going other directions at an instant, within seconds. It doesn't take time at all to change direction, and it moves faster than our F-16s can. So, wow, that's fucking nuts. And I know I'm coming off like someone who doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about, and guess what? I don't. But I'm going to sit here and watch videos with you, and we're going to talk shit. Man, so these times they call for some pretty crazy things, And I was at the store the other day. This is David Fravor, by the way. He's actually going to detail the account for us. If you care to listen, I sure do, because it's an interesting story. But I found some Jack Daniels. It was relatively expensive. I bought me some to help with this throat I got going on. Because down south, this cures the common cold. My Belgian friend says nonsense, but and it probably is. And then we got some umeshu from Japan, which this stuff is delicious, dude. It tastes like grapes, or maybe like kind of almost like raisins. Hold on one second. Let me take a swig of this. That is so good, dude. It's insane how good that is. Anyways, we're gonna watch this guy. Please listen. I might interject as per usual.
So it was 2004, November 14th. It's really, if you draw San Diego to Ensenada, Mexico, we're about 60 miles off the coast in between the two. We're doing workups, so when we get ready to deploy, this was for the 2005 deployment. We were going at sea for November and December of 2004. So we had been out. I had just taken over the squadron mid-October, so I'd been the CO for a month. So we go out and we're putting the battle group pieces together. So it's not just the air wing, but we're on the carrier. We've got the cruiser. We've got all the support ships out there, and we're going to integrate all the defenses and train as one unit. So the exercise that we're going to do is an air defense exercise where there's good guys, bad guys. They're all from the air wing. So the bad guys today are going to be the Marines, VMFA 232, the Red Devils. So they're going to launch, and they're going to go about 100 miles south of the ship, and we're the good guys, and we call it a 2v2, so it's two of us against two of them. And we're going to work with the USS Princeton, which is going to be the controller, and they're going to control the blue forces, and then the red guys are going to give us a presentation that, they're going to try and intercept so we can stop them from getting up towards a carrier. So that's kind of the training set that we're all good. So the Marines take off first, and they start heading to the south. Now, we have no idea that for 2 weeks, the 2 weeks we've been at sea, they've been tracking these things coming out of the sky. And when I talked to the Princeton controller, he's like up to about a dozen of them. They would come down from above 80,000 feet. They'd drop down to about 20,000 feet. They'd hang out, and then they'd go straight back up after about 3 or 4 hours.
Now, when you say they've been
Dude, I want you to just hear what that motherfucker said. These things are just dropping down in here and hanging out, and we know they are. Like, our military people are like, hey, those things are here, and we're tracking them. and there's nothing we can fucking do about it. That's not a security threat. These things are traveling into our airspace with impunity. This is insane.
Tracking them? Who specifically?
This is the USS. The Princeton was tracking them. They saw them on the Nimitz radar, and the E2 could see them. So, because they're out there, that radar's on all the time. And the Spy 1 system on an Aegis cruiser is, the State-of-the-art is probably one of the most sophisticated systems in the world.
So typically when something like this happens and there is some unexplained phenomenon, what do they do?
In this case, if we were in a threat environment, they would tell us. But we're off the coast of San Diego. It doesn't come to the air wing, so we have no idea that these things are out there at all.
So they observe these things, and they never bothered telling any of you guys.
That's correct.
So they just knew that these things had been visiting this area,
yes,
but they just allowed this training exercise to take place anyway.
Yeah, talking to them, for the 2 weeks they would show up, but it was when we weren't flying. So the typical carrier schedule is, for us, it was about noon to midnight. It's a 12-hour day. There's reasons for that. It can go a lot longer. But for training, we just do the 12-hour day thing. And it's cyclic ops, so you got guys taking off and landing periodically. So we were on one of the first goes. It's, noon, 1 o'clock, somewhere around there, and we take off. The Marines take off first, and my buddy Cheeks, who's the CO of the Marine Squadron, he was leading the Red Air. When he launched off the carrier first, they called him up and said, "Hey, what do you got on board?" Well, the original legacy F-18s don't have as much gas as the Super Hornets. Super Hornet's about 30% bigger. So they start talking to him about fuel, and based on how long we're going to be airborne and everything else, they go, "Hey, why don't you just go ahead and proceed to your cap point?" Because we had just taken off. And that's when the controller had come up and said, "Hey," I forget our call sign. It's probably like dealer is usually what we went. So it'd be like dealer 1-1. This is Princeton Control. What do you got? Say your loadout. And I kind of chuckled. He said, "Well, I got a CATM-9, which is basically just a blue metal tube with a seeker head for an AIM-9 IR missile. It's a training. It doesn't come off the airplane. You can beat it with a sledgehammer. That's the only way you're going to get it off, or you got to unlock the lugs with a key." So I'm like kind of chuckling. He goes, "Well, hey, we're going to cancel the training." So we're like, "Okay." He says, "We got real world vector, and they're going to send us out to the west." So picture if it's, if you got a clock, the Nimitz is in the middle. We're a little bit south of that, about 40 miles south, and then the Marines are about 100 miles south of the ship, about 60 miles between the two of us. So as this is all happening, my wingman is joining up, and these are F-18Fs, so there's 2 people in each jet. So it's me and my Wizzo, which is weapon systems operator, and I've got the other pilot and the weapon systems operator in the other jet. So they tell us all this, "Hey, we're going to real world vector," and they send us out 270, about 60 miles away from where we're going. So now we're going out even further out to sea. We have no idea what we're intercepting, and this is when the controller starts talking to us. He says, "Hey, sir, we've seen these objects. For 2 weeks, they've been coming down," and he's giving us the whole story. He says, "We need you to go investigate. We want to know what these are."
But they're asking you to investigate in a jet that's unarmed.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, we have no... And there's reasons for that we don't fly. We typically don't fly with live ordnance unless we're actually going into like a combat zone or we're on a training range and we're going to shoot something. And the reason is you can go through history of the Navy or Air Force. If you put live missiles on airplanes and then you start doing training where you're squeezing the trigger, someone always messes the switchology up and someone gets shot down. It's happened multiple times. So
yeah, we definitely don't want like an intergalactic War of the Worlds, started because some trigger happy Yahoo with a gun. And when I said impunity, that is fucking wrong. I'm sorry, my grammatical mistake has really pissed me off. It's without impunity. These things are flying around without impunity. That should freak us out a little bit, definitely.
We don't do it. There's times that we do, but it's rare. So we start flying out to the west. Now I want you to think, because the other pilot has when you talk to, it's out there, it was a female. When you talk to her, here's the kind of goes through the mindset of, hey, we're off the coast of Mexico, real world vector. We have no idea what we're going to look at. Probably drug runner, because you get the drug runners coming up the coast. So we're like, okay. So we drive out, and they're calling down ranges. So they're telling us, hey, it's 270 at 30 miles at 20,000 feet. And it's, and then you just count down the ranges. And we're talking back and forth the whole time. So they got to a point where they say, hey, merge plot, which means radars have resolution cells, range and azimuth of what the radar can actually see. Once you're inside that box, you can't tell the difference between me and the object I'm going at. We're just become one big blob. So they call merge plot, and so the other jet is on my left-hand side, and I'm gonna go to a clock code to make it simple. So the object we're gonna end up looking for is right in the middle of the clock, and we are at the 6 o'clock position, and my wingman is off to my left side, so she's further down with her Wizzo. So as we're looking around, we look to the right, and there's yesterday was a perfect example out here. The water is perfectly calm, no white caps. I mean, it's literally a perfect San Diego, California day. And we see white water, something like if you see a seamount, rock underwater when you're standing on the shore and the waves are breaking over it, and you're like, what is that? It's usually because there's a rock under the water. So it looks like that, but it's about the size of a 737. It actually kind of has a shape of like a cross, and it's pointing to the east. So you've got the long part going east-west, and you got a couple of things going north and south. So as we're looking at it, because that kind of draws our eyes, we're like, oh, that's kind of odd. We look down, and the Wizzo in the other airplane comes up and says, hey, skipper, do you? And that's about what he gets out of his mouth. And I'm kind of looking at the same thing. I go, dude, do you see that? What is that thing? And what we see is this white tic-tac looking object just above the surface of the water, pointing north-south, and it's going north-south, east-west. It's just radically moving forward, back, left, right at will. And it's moving around the disturbance, the white water that we see.
How big is this thing?
So, over time, it's about 40 feet long. And the way I estimate that is, I got a lot of time fighting other airplanes, so it's about the size of a Hornet fuselage. So that's why I say 40 feet. And this thing's just going left. So the first thing you see when you look down, you go, and this is with our eyes, it's not sensors, right? So we're looking down at this thing, and first thing you think is helicopter, right? Helicopters typically stay below 200 feet when we're out there, and they're just driving around. We're pretty far away from the ship for a helicopter for one of ours. So what is it? So the first thing you look for is rotor wash. If you've watched any TV show that starts kicking the water up, and you can see that. It's really easy to see from the air. So we're like, no rotor wash. Matter of fact, don't see any rotors. Don't see any tail rotor. Don't see any, the main rotors. We're like, that's kind of weird. So as we're driving around, we're looking at this thing. We get to about the 9 o'clock position.
How far away are you from this thing?
I'm at 20,000 feet, and it's right down on the surface, right off our right side. So I'm probably maybe a couple miles lateral and 20,000 feet, and we're just watching it move around. And
so it's very small in your eyes.
Not overly small. An airplane down that low, it's 40 feet. You can see pretty well. It was pretty clear. So I'm like, okay. So I said, I'm gonna go check it out. That's what we're trained to do. The other pilot says, hey, I'm gonna stay up here, and I'm like, that's perfect. So now we'll get some separation. We'll get it from different views, and the other airplane will kind of have a god's eye view of everything that's going on as I go down and check this thing out. So I start driving around, and it's still doing its forward, back, left, right. It's still pointing north-south. We get to about the 12 o'clock position. I'm just in a nice, easy descent. And the reason, because I've been asked, could you go more aggressive? You can, but when you're out over water, the water looks the same at 20,000 feet as it does at 2,000 feet. You don't, so you can easily put yourself in a non-recoverable position if you're not paying attention and you go into the water. So I got this nice, easy descent. I get to about 12 o'clock, and as I'm coming down, I could guess probably about 18,000 feet now, a couple thousand feet below the other airplane. The tic-tac just kind of rapidly goes boop and turns, so now it's kind of pointing east-west, and now it mirrors us. So it's above the surface, we're up high, we're coming down, it starts coming up. I'm like, well, this is getting interesting. So we kind of drive all the way around a circle, I'm descending, it's coming up, and I get over to about the 8 o'clock position on the clock, and it's over at about the 2 o'clock position. Well, the quickest way, as we know as kids, to get someone, you can keep going around the circle. Nothing's going to happen. You cut across the circle. So I'm about, probably 2,000 to 3,000 feet above it, and I just kind of drop my nose aggressively, and I cut across the circle, and it's coming this way. It's because I'm trying to fly to where it's going to be because I want to join on it. I want to see how close I can get to it.
Right.
And as I'm pulling up, it's kind of starting to cross my nose, and it starts to accelerate, and within about less than a second, as I start to pull nose onto it and it crosses right in front of me, it just goes poof and it's gone. So I call the other airplane and I said, hey, do you guys see that thing? And they're like, sir, it's gone. We don't see it at all. So I'm like, okay, that's kind of weird. So
let me unmute real quick. When an Air Force pilot is explaining to you in detail what it saw, that this thing is facing north and south, and it's moving around like, however it wants, and then as soon as it sees him coming, it just rotates and and starts moving out of there, and then within a second is gone. That should tell you something is fucking up. You know, something is crazy with this shit. He actually has another encounter with it here in a minute, so I want to go ahead and continue listening. So just bear with me if you enjoy this. This is fucking crazy shit to me.
We don't see it. We're looking. At the same time, I say, hey, let's turn around and let's go back to see what was in the water. You know, was there something there? So we turn around. We're right there. We haven't gone anywhere. It's gone. Water's perfectly. There's no white water, nothing. It's just blue. We're like, okay. So we turn back around. Now we're heading back out towards the east. And I tell the controller, I said, you know, I first said, I'm kind of weirded out. And I told my backseater that. And we start heading back, and the controller on the Princeton comes up and he says, sir, you're not going to believe this, but that thing is back at your cap point. That was our original point where we were going to hold 40 miles south of the ship. So this thing has went from wherever we were at to, you know, about 60 miles in, you know, maybe 30, 40 seconds. It's already over there. And and they didn't track it. It just appeared. It shows back up on their radar and they go, it's here. So we're like, okay. So we fly back. We don't see it. We don't see it on our radar. We don't see it on any of our sensors. We do like 2 runs and we come back to the ship and land.
That shit is crazy, dude. This thing in 40 seconds traveled 60 miles. So I don't know what you guys think. You know, even if this first video is a bunch of bullshit, you know, it's like, dude, something's going on. Something more than we realize is going on, and it's in our solar system right now. And he goes on to explain, if you want to watch this interview, I'll link it later. He goes on to explain that he's not the only person that's cited these things. There have been other people cited things, and then he's had conversations off the records with other Marine Corps pilots and things like that of similar experiences, but way crazier. Like, apparently there was one, they were going to retrieve something out of the water, and as these Marine Corps pilots were going to get it out of an Osprey, which is basically like an airplane, but it has 2 helicopter-like rotors that can maneuver. Like, one, they can go down to move forward and then go straight up just to hover. And as one of the people were being lowered down to get this object, and I call it an object because I can't remember for the life of me what he said it was, that they were told to get out of there because something was coming up out of the water, and they don't even know what it was. But even if I know I'm butchering the fuck out of the story, but something is really weird. And it's becoming more and more apparent, and it harder and harder for people to deny it. And you know, I've been a skeptic forever, and I'm starting to realize skepticism isn't always the best thing. It's almost time to start being less of a skeptic, and maybe more of almost agnostic towards the idea of these aliens, because it's like the universe is so large. The odds are they're out there. And then with more and more people coming out with these really crazy stories about things that they're seeing and experiencing, I mean, I really don't know at this point how you can be a skeptic, really, actually. So, but that is the end. I'm gonna call it quits there because I got things I want to get done tonight. So, thanks for watching, and take it easy, lemon squeezy. Audio.